in 5, 4, 3, 2.
Hi, and welcome to Exploring Hobbies. I'm your host, Randy Nunez, and today the hobby we're going to talk about is caving. And here to talk about caving is Jessica DeVries. Welcome to the show, Jessica.
Thank you for having me.
So tell us a little bit about caving, or is it also called spelunking?
It's not actually in the caving community. We don't call it spelunking. We actually have this joke that says cavers rescue spelunkers, because we think of spelunkers as people who actually don't know what they're doing and aren't prepared and go into the cave like on a weekend and maybe party and don't care about preserving the cave. So we actually call ourselves cavers because we're more about preserving and making sure everything's prepared.
Okay, well, tell me how you got started in caving.
Coincidentally enough, my 6th grade teacher was friends of my family. She had every single one of my brothers and sisters, and when my sister was in 6th grade, they took this trip. They had this class, and she took them caving. So it was her and my mom went, and my sister really liked it. And then when I was old enough, they started taking me on caving trips, and pretty much I fell in love with it. So my sister and I continue caving pretty much all the time to this day.
So children can go caving? I think of caves as not exactly the safest place for humans.
We have lots of cavers who take their children caving. Yeah, as long as you give them the right equipment and you prepare them and teach them, all the proper caving techniques, they're fine.
Okay. Well, what is there to see in a cave?
There are lots of things to see in a cave. People don't think about all the lovely formations that are under there. And so some of these formations have taken thousands, hundreds of thousands of years to form. The most common one that everybody knows about are stalactites and stalagmites. And stalactites are the ones that drip down from the ceiling.
They're like long spikes?
Yes,
things,
they're
right?
where the water drips down and kind of leaves deposit over time. So stalactites hold tight to the ceiling, and stalagmites are from the ground, so they might reach the ceiling. And then when the two actually form together as one solid formation, then they call it a column.
Okay.
And then we have other things. I think cavers love food because they have things called cave bacon, where if you look at it with a light, it looks like bacon. Cave popcorn, which it's really hard to explain, but it just looks like popcorn all in the cave.
Is it in the ceiling? Or?
It's on the walls,
it's
in the ceilings. It's just how it forms in the cave, where it forms. We have cave pearls, which are kind of self-explanatory, but the water has made them smooth and round, so they kind of look like pearls. We have what you call rimstones. So they actually kind of look like little lakes when they actually have the water in them, but sometimes they dry out. And it's just rims, and they're really pretty.
Okay. So how do you find caves to explore?
The best way to find caves to explore is actually to get in contact with a caver. We don't like to tell everybody where the caves are because people aren't nice to them like we are. They don't want to preserve them as much. So we prefer somebody who's actually wants to go caving and wants to be a caver and not a spelunker. So the best way is to get with a local grotto, which is a local caving group, like one in the States.
Grotto is a euphemism for a caving club?
Yes. They usually call themselves grottos. Like the one in Michigan is the Michigan Interlakes Grotto. You can go caving with one of them because then they can teach you all the proper, preservation of a cave. There are also, if you are a established caver, you can get maps from other people who have been in the caves, because most of the known caves have already been mapped by fellow cavers. Or you can just go with one. Sometimes people find them. We have a lot of cavers who that's what they like to do. They go out where they know the proper karst is, and they'll go looking for new caves to explore.
So a lot of these are pre-explored caves. People have mapped them out, so you have some knowledge and some expectation of what might be in there.
Correct.
And probably the skill set of the individuals that are going, because is it really deep? Is it
Right.
shallow? Is it horizontal or something like that, right?
Yes, and you want to know all that before you go into a cave.
So speaking of that, are there different types of caving?
There are. You have commercial caves and non-commercial caves.
You have commercial caves.
Yes.
Is that the ones you see with a billboard on the side of the road? saying,
This
"Go
is
to
like
cave"?
Mammoth Cave, one of the
Okay.
most well-known commercial caves. So how we decipher commercial and non-commercial, commercial caves are you go in, they provide the light, and usually there's a path for you to follow. So you don't really need a helmet or any of the gear to go with. You know, anybody can go in.
Is that more for like the casual
Yeah, it's more for
vacationer or something like that?
families who want to,
Okay.
do something unique. I mean, Mammoth Caves has tons of different tours you can take for your different skill level. My sister and I actually last summer did one that had 500 steps on it.
Wow.
Yeah. And non-commercial caves to us are the ones where we have to bring in our own gear. So there aren't any lights. You know, somebody either probably owns the property that it's on and gives you permission to enter, but there's no established lights or established paths. So you are basically on your own going.
So other than commercial and non-commercial caving, are there other types of caving as well?
You have vertical and horizontal, which you can do in, pretty much any cave. But a lot of caves, if you want to go through the whole thing, you might have to do some vertical caving. And there's totally different gear for that. And then probably the most dangerous sport, I believe, on the planet is cave diving. And that's actually the caves that are underwater. So you have to have the tank. And, those are a little, I believe it's more dangerous because if anything was to happen, you can't really come up for air because the whole cave is underwater.
So the cave's underwater. It's not like you come up out of the water into yet a cave that's dry.
Some caves are like that.
But most of them are
But
literally you're underwater, surrounded by water, but inside of a cave.
A lot of cave
be-
divers do that.
That has to be that has to require a bit more skill.
It does. A lot more skill and a
Yes.
lot more training.
Okay. So speaking of training,
Yes.
and you gave us some idea already, but what type of training is required for cavers?
There's nothing, if you're going on just like a basic non-commercial cave, you're not going vertical caving and you're not doing cave diving, there's not really any established training that our organization likes. It's best if you go with an established caver, somebody who's been caving before, because they will give you all the like how to climb and all the proper safety techniques and everything that you need to know before you actually go into a cave. They'll tell you that. And then also if you're climbing and you run into a problem, they can help you to find the proper foothold and the proper handholds. And so it's always best to go with somebody that has been caving before. And then if somebody wants to get into caving a lot, we actually have cave rescue training, which they have a weekend one and they have like a week-long one. So I believe that every caver should at least do the weekend one if you're going to be caving a lot, because it gives you a lot more techniques. It tells you what to do in an emergency. It gives you all of the tools that you would need, in case something happened.
So this is training someone as a rescuer to go get a caver.
Correct.
But a caver can use it to educate themselves on how to be more safe while caving.
Correct.
Oh, that's pretty neat.
And, how to handle any minor thing that may come up, or because not everything, if you hurt yourself, not everything would require somebody coming in to rescue you. You could self-rescue if you have enough people and the proper gear.
Okay. Speaking of gear, what kind of equipment do you need? And give us some idea of the cost. And I see we have some samples of gear. All this looks like most of these things we might have at home already. I'm surprised. I was expecting to see a little more esoteric equipment for something like caving.
If you do the vertical caving, you'll have other, you'll have gear similar to if you are a climber, so you'll need the ropes and the ascenders and the descenders and the harnesses. But if you're just doing regular caving, the most important thing you need in a cave is your helmet. We like to do, when you're crawling in a cave, sometimes you think you're past where the rock is and you'll come up and inevitably hit your head on the rock. So we always jokingly call that a helmet check. Yep, you have your helmet on. So that's why it's important, because if you didn't have your helmet, you could really hurt your head.
I see your helmet has a few scratches on it, so it looks like
I did a lot of helmet checks.
Came in handy a few times.
Yes, and then so you can get these at, you want one that's specifically for caving and something that actually has a chin strap. Because when you crawl in a cave and when you climb and stuff, your helmet goes everywhere and you don't want it falling off.
This is not a construction site helmet or something?
No. You actually move your head around so it could fall off. And you're going to want a light, preferably for your helmet because you want your hands free. So it's always good to have a light that you don't have to hold on to while you're caving. Now, if your main helmet or your main light actually fails on you, then we always say you need at least 2 backup lights. Backup batteries would be nice, but if it's, the light actually itself that fails on you, you always want 3 sources of light when you go into a cave. And I will tell you, my sister and I were in a cave, and both of our main sources of lights went out on us, and then 2 of our extra sources of lights went out on us. So between the 2 of us, we only had 1 extra source of light in the cave to get out of the cave. So that's why it's very important that you have 3 sources.
So it's belt and suspenders and another pair of suspenders or belt.
Pretty much, yes.
I can see that.
So then it's also important. So if you're bringing the 2 lights, I always bring a cave pack to put the extra lights in. I also tend to put in there.
Is a cave pack a special caver bag, or it's just what you call it?
Not necessarily. This one actually has straps and stuff on it, so that, and my straps are actually not attached, but then you can put it on your back. So when you're crawling, you don't have to worry about hanging onto it. So you also want knee pads. Let me think, what else did I have? Oh, gloves. Gloves are very important because you don't want to actually touch the rock in the cave because the oils in your skin can actually deteriorate the rocks. So
just protecting the cave, not the person.
Right.
Okay.
So I mean, it's good for your hands.
I'm sensing a trend here with cavers that I'll bring up later.
Yes. It's good for your hands too. I mean, it keeps your hands relatively a little bit cleaner. Not totally if it's a wet cave, but it's more to protect the cave than it is to protect your hands.
So I see you have some shoes here. They don't look like anything special.
No, these are actually just my plain old shoes, but I brought them because it's important when you go in a cave that you have good tread. I would use these in a cave. I actually have other ones, but they were really dirty, so the tread was harder to see. But if you're climbing up on boulders or on rocks, and it could be wet, so you want something that can grip so that you might not slide.
So how much does some of these items cost?
The helmet, depending on the quality you want, can be anywhere from like $50 to $200. The light usually tends to be a little more expensive, so that depends on how big of a area you want it to show and how bright you want it. So you could get one for like $20. It won't give you much light. It will give you enough to see in front of you, but anywhere up from like $600 if you want to get really fancy.
Well, this looks like it has a pretty large, heavy-duty battery pack compared to some of the other ones I've seen.
It does. It's because this one takes C batteries, so it lasts longer in a cave. In all honesty, I don't remember how much this one cost because I bought it so long ago. And then we also have coveralls. It's not a necessity to cave in coveralls, but a lot of cavers like to use them because you can have the clothes on underneath, and then when you get to the car, you can just take the coveralls off and not worry about getting your car all muddy.
That's a good idea.
Changing in public.
Okay.
Yes.
Not any equipment that I was surprised. It's pretty standard. Maybe the helmet's a little bit specialized, but
yeah, you just have to make sure it's got a chin strap so it'll stay on your head.
And of course your water bottle is stay hydrated.
Yes, you want to bring water depending on how long you're going to be in a cave. You want to bring something to eat. You should bring knee pads. another joke in the caving community. You know, they say if somebody says you don't need knee pads in a cave, they're lying. Always take knee pads.
Good advice. Okay. Any other equipment? Just the climbing equipment that if you're going vertical, and I would assume you need some skills if you're doing some of the climbing
Yes,
vertical.
and you would actually want to do some training ahead of time. We usually, our actual national caving organization, which is called the National Speleological Society, they have their own vertical section and their own cave diving section, and they actually have trainings in there. You know, they will help you learn how to do vertical, and usually what they do is like in a school gym they have a rope, and you can practice your going up and going down on the rope.
So this is not like mountain climber level training? It might be.
Yeah, I think if you want to do any cave that involves a lot of skill, you're going to want to get mountain climber type, level training. But there are some caves that you might just need to just go up once or come down once, so just getting the basics there, as long as you're with, again, somebody who's experienced in vertical caving, then you should be fine.
You kind of do a vertical and then the rest is horizontal or something like that.
There's a lot of caves like that, yeah. You can go, and they say if you want to do a through trip, which means that has one entrance on one side and like an exit somewhere else, there's a lot of caves where you can go in and turn around and come back out the same way you came in. So if most of the cave is horizontal and there's one vertical part, you can still go in it. You just have to go back out the same way you came in.
Interesting. How do you keep from getting lost when you're in a cave? It's a dark place. Maybe you haven't been there before, even though it's mapped out.
Yes.
How do you make sure you keep your bearings about you?
The thing that we always teach people when you go in a cave, as you're going, every once in a while, turn around and look behind you. Because if you're coming back that way, so even if you're not coming back that way, it's a good thing to do in case, you ever get turned around. Because when you go one direction and you turn around and come back the other direction, it doesn't look the same. It looks completely different. And also it's good if you have like a really nice column, or you see some unique formation, you can use that as a point of reference too. Be like, okay, it was on my right side coming in. So when you go back and it's on your left side, okay, we passed this formation, so I know I'm going in the right direction.
So you're not drawing arrows to mark your way back. It doesn't sound like a cave. That's not proper caver etiquette.
No, because then you damage the cave. So
you don't leave markers behind or anything like that.
No.
You just use your memory and
pretty much.
And the team, if you will.
Yeah. Well, the general rule of thumb is you usually go in the cave with somebody who's been there before.
Oh, okay.
Because then they'll know their way through, and if you get lost, they'll know how to get back.
That would be handy. What about creatures that might be in those caves? First thing I think of is bats.
Bats we see a lot of. Those are the ones that we see most when you get back into the cave. Because caves are about maybe 50 degrees, roughly, year-round. So a lot of animals don't like to live in the cave. They might live at the mouth of the cave, in the summer so it'll be cooler for them, or in the winter it'll be warmer for them. But most of the stuff we see inside the actual cave are bats. And then closer to the entrance we see like cave crickets or other bugs. Really big spiders if you come out of Mammoth Cave. There was a very big spider when we came out this past summer. But I myself have never actually seen any snakes going in. They might be there, but they tend to stay away from us.
It sounds like it's not necessarily a zoo of creatures down there, but you want to. Some people might be more squeamish around those types of things. It might not be the hobby for them. True,
but if you can just get past them in the first initial, entranceway, unless it's bats, then don't go in the cave.
Right.
But
no bats.
Right.
You don't like bats? No caves.
If you don't like bats, don't go in the cave. But bats are. The television has made bats out to be worse than they actually are. They have their echolocation keeps them away from you. And as long as you stand still, they won't even come. They'll fly right around you. They're cavers love bats because they serve a very good purpose. I mean, they eat all our mosquitoes and stuff, and most of us find them kind of cute.
Cavers like bats. Okay.
Yes, we love bats.
I would think people would imagine caving as a fairly high-risk hobby because you're going someplace, it's dark, it's not your footing might not be even, you're having to climb, you're having to have this equipment. How do you keep yourself safe? I know you've talked about some of the equipment that you bring, but I'm sure there's some other things you need to do to make sure you're safe when you do caving.
Yes. So the general rule of thumb, the most important rule is never go caving by yourself. We say about maybe 4 to 6 people in a cave group. You can have more if you don't mind if it takes a while to go through the cave. But you should at least have 4 people because then if anything was to happen, one could stay with and the other 2 can go out and get help. Another important rule is to make sure that you tell somebody where you're going and when you're coming back. Because if you don't do that, they won't know where to come looking for you or when you were supposed to be arriving at home. So they won't know when to start looking for you. I went in a cave one time. I think we were in there for, it seemed 16 hours. I don't think it was, but it seemed like it was that long. But the guy we were with told his wife, if I don't come back by this time, start looking for us. And we actually didn't get lost or anything. We just were having so much fun that time got away from us. But by the time we got back to the camping area, they were actually gearing up to try to come look for us because we were about a half an hour late. So that is one important thing. They know when to come look for you. Also, a good thing to remember is if it's a wet cave, you could get, I don't want to say you could get, but you want to worry about hypothermia. So if you're going to go in and you know it's a wet cave, you want to make sure you dress appropriately. So you want to have long sleeves on, and if you can have Polypro socks, they're like special socks that keep your feet from getting really cold. And then I would take, if you're going in with people, you need to take a lot of rest so that you don't get overtired, because you can make mistakes when you're overtired. But the one thing you want to worry about with taking a rest in hypothermia is if you sit on a rock, it tends to take all your body heat. So you don't want to sit on the rock for like a half an hour because you'll get cold. And then some of the basic stuff for climbing in a cave, when you're climbing up and over things, or maybe climbing up what we call chimneying, which is going in between 2 rocks. You want to make sure that you always have 3 points of contact. So that could be 1 hand, 2 feet, maybe your rear end and your 2 hands. Right. Just make sure you have 3 points of contact at all times. That is one of our biggest safety rules, because 3 points of contact will help you from falling. Let's see, whatever. Oh, yes. Know your limits. And most importantly, don't ever go caving under the influence of anything, because you don't want to be under the influence of anything, because you could, it can hamper your skills and you could trip over the smallest thing.
Well, especially if you've got a place that's dark, there could be jagged things,
yes,
pointy objects. You might want to be at your best, if you will, rested and
yes.
And not
well
under
rested
any
is
influence.
always good too.
Good. And you mentioned a few already, but maybe we could recap. I'm assuming there's organizations and clubs for caving. So
yes.
why don't you talk about a few of those?
The national organization, which spans all of the United States, is the National Speleological Society. They're actually, they have a lot of events that happen over the year. They have a big event once every year that happens in the summer. They have a convention and
They're not the National Caving Society?
No.
They're using the S word.
Yes, they are. Well, because they're using speleology, which is the study of caves.
Oh, okay.
Yes, it's a little different than spelunkers.
Okay, we'll let that one slide.
Yeah, and
what's their website?
They are www.caves.org.
Caves.org?
Caves.org,
Okay.
yes. And then we also have the local to Michigan, we have the Michigan Interlakes Grotto,
Okay.
which most of the people are actually on this side of the state, but there's a few of us on the other side.
Okay.
And then also with that, we have the Michigan Karst Conservancy, which
Michigan
Karst Conservancy.
Conservancy. Okay.
Yes. So that is a group that basically wants to protect caves because a lot of caves are made in karst. So we own a few property in Michigan, mostly in the Upper Peninsula, that actually has caves on it. And for the MKC, the Michigan Karst Conservancy, it's a lot of the same people who are in the Michigan Interlakes Grotto are the same people who are in the MKC.
Right. So Michigan has caves that you could explore.
Very small.
Very few. Okay.
Yes, because we don't have the karst for it as much as they do, like in southern state. Indiana has some, West Virginia, Tennessee, Alabama, Georgia. They all have like much bigger ones than we do. Ours is it's a nice beginner cave. If anybody wants to try out caving, the non-commercial caving, it's a good way to start because we have pretty much everything in that. I mean, we've got water, we've got a tiny little waterfall, there's parts where you have to crawl and parts where you have to climb. So it's a nice little beginner's basic cave for anybody that, is looking to try it out.
If you're going to get involved with caving in Michigan, it sounds like you might start here, but you might have to travel a little bit if you want to expand beyond.
Yes.
You want to grow yourself in the hobby.
Yeah, and there's a lot of caving events throughout the year with different organizations. I mean, different grottos in different states put them on, and they tend to not cost a lot because cavers don't like to spend a lot. We just want to go caving. So
Great, because some hobbies can be really expensive.
yes.
So, you have any last thoughts?
Well,
for one thing I keep hearing
yes.
you talk about is this concept of conserving the environment that you're in,
Yes.
as opposed to just sort of taking pieces away and things like that. So why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Cavers are very big on that. We want to conserve the cave for future caver generations to enjoy the same way that we enjoy. It takes so long for the cave formations to form. So we want to try to help conserve that. But then also recently, I don't know if you have heard, but there's this thing called white nose syndrome with the bats. It's been spreading pretty much throughout the United States. And what it does is it's a fungus that grows on the bat's nose, and it wakes them up early from hibernation, and then they can't survive through the winter. So it's actually been slowly getting rid of a bunch of our bat populations. So that's, when we talk about caving, it's actually really important to think of those things, because if you go in a state where there isn't white nose syndrome and you bring gear from a state that had it, you could be transferring that to that cave and to those bats. So that's one way that we, as the caving community, are trying very hard to keep the bats safe. And then our biggest philosophy that we always say, the cavers, I guess it's our motto, you could say, is leave nothing but footprints, take nothing but pictures, and kill nothing but time. So it's, you're not taking anything out, and you're not leaving anything there. You want to take all your trash with you. If you bring a cave pack and you want to eat, put your trash in your cave pack.
Sounds like a very responsible group.
They are. They're very responsible. We love our caves, and we want to keep them safe and preserved.
All right. Well, that's about all the time we have. We'd like to thank Jessica DeVries for talking to us about caving. Stay tuned for more future episodes of Exploring Hobbies.